Mr. Five here. Today is election day. If you are not out and voting, you should be out voting for our democratic process in this country. It doesn't always seem to be the best of candidates with this Democratic only, Republican only system, and other candidates and some involved, Green Party, Independent Party, whatever. The point of voting, I think, is more important than having the perfect candidate to vote for. And it's voting for, right now, democracy versus dictatorship. You know, I remember a time when we didn't talk about politics, right? I remember when I was young and I first learned about registering to vote and all of that. And it was like taught to me that you keep it a secret, that you don't tell anybody who you're voting for or what your candidacy is or what your politics is, because you know, we all have a democratic agreement in some sense, but we all may not agree on the specifics of that democracy. And so that's saying there used to be a time where you wasn't arguing and fighting with people about their politics. People weren't, you know, open with their politics. My generation, different generation that came out was like, you know, we can tell you whatever we feel and we don't like it, so what? Not argue about it. You know, we stand on business, stand on our ground of where we stand at. And that has created a lot of conflict. Like, I got into so many arguments recently with people. I remember I was arguing with this sister who's a Muslim and a Republican. And it was just like, this is what it is. And this is what Trump said. And that's it. And it was like, you have no room to entertain any other thought. And it's hard because you can't have a debate with a person like that. You can't have a debate with people like that. So some people are just stuck in their views and decide to say some people are going to vote because of what they hear and what they see. A lot of people think Trump gave stimulus checks, even though obviously it was put in the administration before because the budget has to go and how the government works, that it really wasn't him. He just was handing them out, right? Matter of fact, I think he took action to stop it. Trump gets credit for death penalty and clemency applications that were filed before he was president, right? All of these sort of things that he progressively has to pitch out was him passing the buck from other duties, which I'm not going to say the Democrats are the best at because they're forced to do it, like us advocates force systems to do it. And it's like now it's hard to even have a conversation about politics or how you feel about a candidate without a, you know, understandable debate, but without it turning personal. When people feel like, oh, this personally is impacting me, personally supporting me. And a lot of times people don't realize that the one thing that they feel supported on, there's 50 other things that are going to negatively impact them and their children and the way that they used to living. And so there's also a lot of preparation power grabs, right? Like you got Mayor Adams, who is literally preparing for Donald Trump to win so he can be the dictator in New York, right? So he created a whole new system, fuck the UN, forget oversight, let me dismiss the city council, let me just rule in some sense over this city. And it's more than just being bravado, you know, not mentioning his 57-page indictment that is crazy bravado evidence of like telling the funders and having conversations that are just so criminalized and so, you know, involved in the minutiae of the straw donations and the other accusations. It wasn't like it was just his administration, he got to take responsibility because he's the boss. No, this is more like he was like, nah, tell him don't worry about it, I don't care about that. And like his wife saying, why are we flying to Turkey? Like text messages between him and his lady. So what I'm saying is we have all of these systems that are preparing for this, right? Even I feel like, you know, all film and media is just promotion and sort of soft preparation and programming. And like this film, Civil War, like that's what it's going to look like when states sort of collaborate and try to separate themselves from the union. And all they want is an excuse to do that. And you have these positional powers like governors and like the governor of Florida, right? He may just try to separate a state because he's done it administratively with so much policies and legislation that doesn't look like the other states, right? And so by creating this unified system of separation, then these places will start to separate themselves if anything happens. And that will be a literal civil war. But we've held through democracy. We've held our democracy through slavery, through chattel slavery, through the continued oppression of black people, but through the human rights of others. Like we've had so many problems and quote unquote issues with immigrants, but everybody in this country is an immigrant. And this was the same argument of yesteryear, where people was coming before others and they felt like their rights and all, that there's this sort of total sum of rights, and that if you get rights, I mean, it's taken away from mine. It's like, it doesn't work like that. And those illusions are only subsided with education, with activism, with organizers, with people who can educate and heal people, healing people, right? So this election is very powerful. And I just remember a time when we weren't talking about politics. Now it's like on Instagram and social media and Twitter, and I can't, you can't avoid it. And so, as you cast your votes this week, this election for American president, which is just a puppet position in some sense, think of beyond the person and their opinion about politics, because consider that they may not have just been as educated as you are. They don't share the same experiences you may have. And they may have a disagreement because they may not know how these things will affect them. A lot of people regretted voting for Trump the first time. A lot of people doubled down and will do it again. A lot of people are sided by the bias, by the racism. And they will just anything to put them above people of color, anything to keep people of color down or put them down any further, or to get like revenge, in some sense, genetic revenge, they will side with bias, even though it makes no sense, absolutely no logic, even goes against the same principles they themselves have said, but they will side with it because it is against their enemy. And so I think only as a people in this country, when we start looking at each other as enemies, but I do know if we do win this election and Trump is not president, then the real work is ahead of us. The real work of answering the question of why is half the country still willing to vote for a dictator? Why does half the country do not want government oversight? They do not want a democracy. They don't want a system where people have power. They want the power chatteled amongst a small few, and they don't mind having a ruling class. Why is that? How are we going to solve that? Because that's a fucking problem. Peace. Vote for what's right for you.